Right. Kilkenny won so often in the past 16 years that there was going to be a situation where Kilkenny would be up against Kilkenny. So in this situation, it's the 2006 team that beat Cork and ended the Rebel treble against the 2011 team that beat Tipperary and made sure that the Premier would go another decade without a back-to-back, which I'm sure, as an Offaly man and therefore a de facto Kilkenny man these days, Michael Fernie, you were happy enough to see that happen.
My bigger question is, who would have got more satisfaction? Tipp breaking Kilkenny's 5 in a row, or Kilkenny breaking Cork's 3 in a row?
I would say, oh, I don't know. Like I'd say because the four, like Kilkenny had the 4 in a row and stopped the 5 in a row. I think that's more historically significant. So I think that's probably the bigger one.
There was a fair hatred between Cork and Kilkenny at the time now too, in fairness.
Yeah, there was actually as much as anything else. For Kilkenny fans, who a lot, and a lot of those will decide which way this goes. What did they rather? Did they rather sewing it into Cork in 2006 and making sure they didn't do the 3 in a row? And it was such a huge thing at the time because Cork felt unstoppable. But then equally, Tipperary felt unstoppable in 2011, even though the warning signs were there in the semi-final against Dublin, having scored so many goals in Munster. And Lara Corbett had just been going to town. He scored 4 goals against Watford. He'd scored another goal in the semi-final against Dublin. And because he'd scored the hat-trick the year before against Kilkenny, I'd say, and stopped the drive for 5. What would you say? If you were a Kilkenny man here and you half are, who do you who do you like sewing into more?
I think Kilkenny and Cork, like there's a respect between Kilkenny and Tipperary because they would consider themselves two hurling aristocrats. But I genuinely think there was respect. Don't get me wrong, but they were diametrically opposed in what their beliefs were. Like I just read a little extract from Owen Larkin's book, and I thought this kind of gets it fairly well. There was no great love for Cork in our dressing room back then, to put it mildly. To us, they were full of shit. Now, the county board in Kilkenny was a dream to work with, and by and large, we got everything we wanted. But we didn't seek to have our towels folded and waited for us when we came in from training and that kind of nonsense. We didn't insist on trimmings that are incidental to winning hurling matches. Donal Cusack and his special contact lenses and glove for catching the ball was more of it. He once said he went out on his bike one Christmas day to try and get an edge on the hurlers all over Ireland that were full up with turkey. What edge was he getting going out for a cycle? Maybe the lads that were at home enjoying themselves with their families were the ones that really getting the edge. And it's just, you can still sense, like, and even in Henry Shefflin's book, Henry, who in fairness to him, would never really rock the boat too much. You definitely, that Stepford Wives comment from Don Logue's book, you could just see how much that got to a lot of the Kilkenny boys. It basically was, they were just kind of going along with things. They were so establishment, they had no interest in, ripping up any scripts or anything like that, whereas the Cork boys definitely did. Owen Larkin goes on to talk about how the Cork lads got Cork Eoch emblazoned in on their shorts and stuff like that, and they were just so their views and everything were so opposed that I would think, funnily enough, that Kilkenny got more joy out of beating Cork in '06 than Tipp in 11.
Really? And then I suppose, Don Logue probably opened the door for that, for hostile words, we'll say, like what you've quoted from Owen Larkin there, by talking about the Stepford Wives first. But to be fair, now, an awful lot of the players on the Tipperary side, the main sort of players that we've seen win their 3 All-Irelands over a 10 or 12 year gap, not too many of them have retired and certainly haven't brought out the horde of autobiographies that we've seen from the Kilkenny point of view. So a few of the Kilkenny lads have, had a few chops at Tipperary, like for example Jackie Tyrrell saying Tipperary didn't have the balls, and then Owen Larkin, I interviewed him and he said that Tipp didn't like it in tight games. So they've, as in like the games where Tipp hammered them, obviously somehow Tipp had the stomach for those, and Kilkenny are somewhat exonerated, as if those games didn't start at all and weren't tight at some stage. But they've kind of opened the floodgates, and we'll see what happens with Tipperary down the line. But it does feel like there's a little bit more poison with Cork. Let's go back to 2006. I just want to get the teams up on screen here, and I'll kind of run through it and then throw it back to you. That's actually the Kilkenny team from 2011 coming up first. But just to jump over to the team in 2006. James McGarry in goals, Mick Kavanagh, Noel Hickey, Jackie Tyrrell, James Ryle, John Tennyson, and Tommy Welch wearing number 7 rather than number 5. Chad Fitzpatrick and Derek Ling. Then a fairly savage half-forward line of Richie Power, Henry Shefflin, Owen Larkin, and an inside line of Eddie Brennan, Martin Comerford, and 1-3 from Taggy Fogarty, who ended up getting man of the match in that game. So you do well to pick out too many holes in that team, too many gaps in that team.
Yeah, funny enough, that was Taggy's kind of real day in the sun. Taggy, who, like, I think he definitely has 7 anyway. He might have 8 All Irelands. I think he has 7, but he never actually got an All Star, which is funny enough. I think he was one of the only. Probably him and James McGarry were 2 of the only ones who were regulars throughout a lot of that time to not end up with All Stars. Just thinking about why Tommy wore 7, I'd imagine he wore 7 because JJ injured himself, did the cruciate, didn't he, a couple of weeks before the final. He ended up being out. James Ryle would have been more comfortable playing 5 than 7. I know positions are fluid, but maybe they weren't as much back then. And then JJ being out was a big one. He obviously sat in for the picture and everything, but the fact that they were able to absorb a loss like that, basically, to me, the best defender that has ever played the game. To me, I actually have no problem saying that. Definitely the best defender I've ever seen. And they were able to slip in. James Ryle, and John Tennyson came in then at centre back as well. Was Brian Hogan injured for the 06 final, or had he just not nailed down a place?
I don't think he just kind of slipped out of the team at that stage, because John Tennyson, he had stepped up and taken over what in commentary was referred to, I think by Gerard Canning, as the problem centre back position. So at that stage, maybe Brian Hogan, and I know Brian Hogan appeared in 04 against Wexford, so he was certainly in and around there, in and out of the team, but just even to jump onto that game, actually, I kind of noted a couple of things as I was watching it back. After, all the talk is that Kilkenny absolutely kind of overpowered Cork's running game and all this kind of stuff with their ferocious work rate, which of course was a huge factor of it. But after 28 minutes, it was 7 points apiece. Now, there were a couple of kind of signs there that Kilkenny might pull away, but Cork had put away 7 of 8 chances, which means that they were obviously very, very efficient up front, which they needed to be. Kilkenny had scored 7 of 12, and maybe some of that was wasteful shooting, but at the same time, it's not like Cork were playing too badly. Then came the Taggy goal. He kind of capitalised on a mistake or a ball that was kind of bobbling around in the area. Bang! And then 14 years later, he's in Dancing with the Stars. But
It's funny though how it can happen a lot of the time with teams. Cork going for 3 in a row, and then all of a sudden that Cork team is gone. If they don't get over the line, a lot of the time, it's not a last stand. But if they'd won 3 in a row, I wonder, would things have been much different? They disappeared off the radar kind of completely after that game. Whether at that time going into that final, you're thinking these lads could dominate for an awful long time.
I don't think anyone thought that this is a 4 in a row starting today for Kilkenny of All Ireland victories. Obviously, as time went on, they became more and more dominant. But if you look at let's look at the Cork team that day. Actually, I think I can get it up here. So the team that day was Donald Cusick, of course, in goals. Brian Murphy, Dermot O'Sullivan, Pat Mulcahy, John Gardner, Ronan Curran, Sean O'Halpine, Tom Kenny, Jerry O'Connor. I mean, this is a star-studded team. Timmy McCarthy, Niall McCarthy, Ben O'Connor would won 4. Neil Ronan, Brian Corcoran, and Joe Dean with 6 points as well. Like, it's not as if they beat a team that was fully on the wane or anything like that. I think this Cork team in 2006, now they weren't always hitting the absolute heights throughout the championship. Beat Tipperary by a goal, and I don't think Tipperary were fully at the races this year. They had a great rivalry with Waterford, beat them by a goal, I think, in the semi-final. And that was the day Cathal Naughton came on and scored 1-1. In a way, the fact that they needed a young lad to come on and turn the game for them, is that a sign that they were possibly on the wane, or do we just accept that rivalry with Waterford, every game was going to come down to the wire?
Yeah, possibly so. You always think there's like warning signs or there's writing on the wall when, it's easy to say it in hindsight after. Just another thing that Owen Larkin says, which I think is interesting, because if a couple of players drop off, they are in trouble. He just said, we turned them over in the 2006 All-Ireland final and that was the end of them. They really hit their peak in 2005 and were on a downward spiral after that. They only had maybe 17 players that were quality inter-county hurlers, and many of them had been on the go for a long time at that stage. So it's funny, like, it's an interesting point, because if you're only operating off a panel of that, we'll say that amount, realistically, and the amount of lads that they were bringing into games will kind of reflect that as well. That if 5 or 6 go off the boil, or if you have an injury or something like that, all of a sudden your options are reduced and the standard is reduced massively, kind of overall as well. So they never had the strongest pattern. They were always operating mainly off the same kind of bank of players. Funny as well to hear the Kilkenny approach going into it. Wasn't that the day where they famously said that, like, they were all going to go man for man, and they were only going to worry about their own man and this kind of crack? And then Tommy Walsh said the ball was thrown in and they just went haywire, and everybody just started chasing the ball. And what looked like, new age tactics and Kilkenny have revolutionised the game was not what they had planned to do whatsoever.
With this idea of going man for man, you don't have 12 lads in your own half of the field at the time if you're going man to man. So, I mean, anyone who bought that lie and this idea we don't have tactics, I mean, it just beggars belief that people would actually listen to that. I mean, there was tactics coming out your ear. I mean, the work rate is a huge part. Obviously, Mick Dempsey preparing them and put the football influence and players coming into their own half, but the idea that they just went out and hurled is beyond belief. I'll jump on to 20.
That would have been one of Mick Dempsey's. I think he was he Brian at the end of 2005? Yeah. So you're really starting to see his influence now. You're really starting to see those deep line half forwards. You're starting to see, the work rate. I know it's a tactic. Like, they're basically dropping a load of men back and absolutely packing that kind of defense. So you start to see that when he's been given a bit of time to put his stamp on things.
Now let's jump forward to 2011 and have a look at this this Kilkenny team. David Herity in goals, Jackie Tyrrell, Noel Hickey, Paul Murphy, Tommy Walsh, Brian Hogan, JJ Delaney, Michael Fennelly and Michael Rice, Eddie Brennan, Richie Power, Henry Shefflin, Colin Fennelly, Owen Larkin and Richie Hogan. So I think it goes without saying that's pretty much a powerhouse team. The question is that a stronger team than 2006? It's
hard to pick holes in either of them, to be fair. What I would put it down to is when I compare the 6 team and the 11 team is the opposition. Definitely I think anyway, there were definitely signs that, not that they could be got at, but there were signs that there was maybe complacency, that they thought they were cock a hoop. Did 7 goals against Waterford that day.
I'm not going to go with complacency. I'll tell you what.
Just quickly, right? So Liam Sheedy left. Liam Sheedy, who brought them from their knees to the summit, he left, and I think you get like a residual effect where things carry on for a while, and the same once, even if he's not there. Much like I think Mick Ryan got when Eamon O'Shea left, and it carries on for a while. But I think it's really only in 12 that you saw that things really fell apart. But Tipp weren't going unbelievably well. I remember chatting to Brendan Cummins. He said they kind of sleepwalked into the final. They just thought they were going to win. And that wasn't the case. A year previous, they were absolutely ravenous lions. So they were coming into a final not as hungry. And if you could name 3 Tipperary lads that performed in that 11 final, I'd be surprised.
No, you can't at all. I think Tipperary kind of were unbelievably predictable as the year went on. It was just long ball after long ball. I don't think Declan Ryan took the team on in terms of tactics, and like what John Allen was doing with Cork, he'd already won an All-Ireland. Like, he basically took a Cork team that had won an All-Ireland, the same as Declan Ryan did when he took over Tipperary. Only the difference is John Allen went on and won an All-Ireland, retained it. Whereas Declan Ryan, what was happening with that Tipp team was long ball after long ball, and then when that wasn't working, we'll go for another long ball. Nearly caught against Dublin. And in this final, Owen Kelly was put full forward, and he more or less stood in full forward the whole time, making it predictable for Kilkenny. Noel Hickey stood on him. Jackie Tyrrell obviously did a very good job on Lark Corbett, and Tipp never got going at all. And I think it was like 5 points to 1 after 15 minutes. and Tipp just didn't get going. So if you were to talk about a team beating a team and needing to be at your best to beat them, I would say Cork offered sterner resistance in 2006 than Tipp did in 2011. So from that point of view, I would actually be going for 2006. But the flip side is that Kilkenny team in 2011, TJ Reid couldn't get into it. You now had a team that instead of a midfield of Derek Ling and Cha Fitzpatrick, you had Michael Fennelly and Michael Rice. And obviously Michael Rice was terrorised with injuries pretty much thereafter. But there's a case to be made that this Kilkenny team in 2011 had a bit more star quality in places like Richie Proward probably kicked on to another level. Richie Hogan was up at, well, obviously he wasn't there in 2006, and Richie Hogan for a number of years around this era was absolutely brilliant. So from that point of view, I think you could push it back towards 2011, but I'm still just nudging towards 2006.
In 11, of course, you had a fit again, JJ Delaney. You had Brian Hogan, the best centre back in the game, probably for 6-7 years at that time. He had that powerhouse midfield, really. Like Fennelly was outstanding from when he actually got into the team and kept his place in the team. He was outstanding. I just think it's unreal when you look through the forwards. Like, Jesus, when you go from the 06 even to 06 to the 11 team, you're looking at the 11 team, Eddie Brennan, Richie Power, Henry Shefflin, Colin Fennelly, who took an outrageous slap in the head that day. Remember, he got bursted. He hooked Lar from like another parish with his head at one stage. And then you have the rest of the forward lines, Owen Larkin and Richie Hogan, with TJ Reid and John Mulhall coming on. Like, it's serious. For me, though, I think it comes back to the level of opposition that they were playing. And I just think, as you say, I think Cork provided sterner opposition. I think Kilkenny were only at 7 out of 10 to win the 11 final. I think they were at 8.5 to 9 out of 10 to win the 06 final.
Interesting one. So we're both agreeing on 2006 in theory, and it's, as I said, it's mainly going to be Kilkenny people that are going to decide which way this goes. Which way do you think Kilkenny people will go on this? Who will they have more of a fondness for?
Oh, yeah, see, this is the thing. The Kilkenny players hated Cork more, I think, but I think the Kilkenny fans might hate Tipp more. So, like, that's kind of can be what it comes back to.
Well, what's the hate about us? We're good jokes.
Yeah, no, just from the year previous, I think I expect it to be tight, but I think if people took off the hatred of Tipp, I think the 06 team was a better team. I just think what they beat was better than what Kilkenny beat in 11. But I take either team going into war now, to be fair.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, we'll leave it there. So don't forget, people, you can vote on Twitter. Also, I'm going to put up a comment of Kilkenny 2006 and another comment of Kilkenny 2011 after the video on YouTube. So click like on whichever one you want. Mick, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jet.